Anthony Bourdain always seemed like a man who had truly tasted life. He could speak plainly about complicated things, talk about pain with irony, about culture with reverence, and about food with something close to religious awe. To millions, he was not just a chef or a writer. He was a guide into a richer, more honest world. But behind that image, there was always something hidden, something the camera could never quite catch. A personal shadow, dark and persistent. Bourdain was born in New York City in 1956, into what began as a working-class family. His father held down 2 jobs to keep food on the table. But soon everything changed. His father became a music producer, and his mother an editor at the New York Times. Their home was filled with the sound of jazz, the smell of coffee, and heated arguments about literature. Surrounded by this intellectual freedom, Bourdain developed a deep love for art and independent thinking. Then came the moment that changed everything. Ironically, it was an oyster. Somewhere in France, while vacationing with his parents, a local fisherman pulled one straight from the sea, cracked it open, and offered it to the young boy. Without hesitation, he swallowed it. The briny salt, the slippery freshness, the crunch of time itself. That was the moment his culinary journey began. Unconscious at first, but irreversible. As a teenager, despite the comfort of his surroundings, Anthony began chasing intensity. Not in sports or books, but in drugs. He said he had been obsessed with trying the forbidden since he was 10. At 12, he took his first acid trip. It wasn't rebellion, it was escape. From safety, from comfort, from a life that felt too smooth. He believed that real depth could only be found in pain, passion, and destruction. So he sank into a world where night swallowed day without the promise of morning. At school, he fell in love, truly and forever. Her name was Nancy Putkowski. She was older, freer, wilder. She lived like there was a cliff beneath her feet. Their love wasn't a teenage whim, it became both his anchor and his storm. Together they threw parties, listened to music, flirted with danger. When Nancy went off to Vassar, Anthony followed. But the elite college and its pretentious students with their performative depth left him cold. After 2 years, he left, not running away but making a choice. He enrolled at the Culinary Institute of America. To his parents, it sounded like a sentence, as if he had chosen crime over a profession. After graduation, he and Nancy moved to New York City. In smoky kitchens and cramped apartments, their adult lives began. Not the lives they had dreamed of, but the ones waiting for them nonetheless. Work, exhaustion, endless parties. Beneath the surface of stability, the hunger for chaos still burned. Bourdain lived like he felt everything more sharply than most. Every dish, every story, every trip to a foreign land became a kind of revelation. But deep inside, there was a silence no one could hear. He gave the world so much: flavors, voices, perspectives, insight. But he kept the pain for himself. And one day there was a final call, 2 words to a friend. 2 words the world never heard. But perhaps in those words was the truth of him. The loneliness of someone who feels everything too deeply. Once, a young Anthony Bourdain dreamed of becoming a writer. But life had other plans. First came college, then the kitchen, and eventually a long detour into shadows. The kind where broken dreams smolder in the wind, dulled by narcotics and self-deception. He longed to stand among the greats, those who lived on the edge and knew what freedom tasted like. But the deeper he went, the more he sank into a pain no sharp knife or powerful dose could numb. He arrived in New York full of youthful arrogance and a hunger, not just for food, but for danger, for experience. In those early years, he worked in kitchens that rattled with the clang of pans and whispered with the constant threat of failure. Restaurants kept closing down, one after another, but Bourdain held on. He was already a sous chef, already in command. Yet more and more, he vanished between shifts to buy himself a moment of silence. Heroin, cocaine, whatever it took to quiet the storm inside. He once recalled riding in a cab with 3 friends, all of them addicts. Someone said that only 1 out of the 4 would make it out alive. He looked around and thought, let it be me. But choosing to live isn't the same as being saved. It's only the first step. followed by withdrawal, pain, and the desperate, shattering effort to become someone else. He tried. He signed up at a methadone clinic. He gave up heroin. But then came another nightmare, crack. He described crawling across the carpet during his worst days, searching for crumbs of the drug. And all the while, he kept showing up to work. Was it resignation or defiance, refusing to die? One Christmas, poverty finally broke him. He had nothing left except a vinyl collection, his private archive of memory, love, and youth. He laid the records out on a blanket on Broadway, trying to sell them for enough money to buy a fix. That was the moment, he later said, when he realized the next step was death. And he stopped. He quit. Not immediately. Not perfectly. Not forever. But he took a step. The world, however, wasn't waiting to reward him. He soon found himself working at a restaurant backed by the mob. Line cooks sold cocaine behind the kitchen doors. The place felt more like a den than a dining room. Everything he had tried to leave behind came rushing back. Close, unavoidable, on the plate, in his hands, in the dark. Then came the blow that shook him to the core. His father, the man whose love for books and culture had inspired him since childhood, died of a heart attack. Suddenly, at the age of 57, Anthony didn't show his grief, but it echoed in every word he spoke afterward. To stay upright, he kept moving, on autopilot, without a plan, just forward. By the late 1990s, something started to shift. He was hired at Brasserie Les Halles in New York, not just as a cook, but as executive chef.